One of the things, and this is the top water that I have on is basically what we call a Pop R. This is the Bass Pro version of what we call our Pop R, called an Excalibur, which is the original was an old time Pop R. This is the Excalibur. Now for conservation, we take the hooks off of them, so we don't want our fish hooked. And but this one, typically there's a little white tail on it. This is probably one of my favorite types of lures, just the chrome with the black back or white. I think they're running these on sale right now too, but these are a nice little thing for the kids to have in their tackle box. It's easy to throw, it's lightweight, and as you can tell, the fish really like it. Once the water temperature is about 60 and above, these are really good baits to throw. One of the things I see a lot of times is people will throw them out and they're working them really fast, and a lot of times they'll overwork it and work it right past the fish. Notice how I worked it through there really quick, and they didn't really pay much attention to it. And you watch while ago, a lot of times I'll throw it out, a lot of people overwork it. And a lot of times you'd be amazed, a fish can see things. A lot of times, see how I let it set and they came and ate it? So a lot of times people take a tendency to, then they wouldn't turn it loose. They have a tendency to overwork their bait. A lot of times that's one of the probably biggest mistakes I see, versus if I throw it out. And the textbooks, when I was a kid, I'm 42, when I was a kid, they would say throw it out, let the ripple settle, and then work it and pop it real fast. Well, that's only going to catch the really, really active fish. How many fish did we catch that time? Not very many, right? Versus if we throw it out and let it set, a lot of times I'll let my bait set for a long, I may count, watch the sun come up. Look how many fish we have looking at this bait right now. Amazing, huh? Had that bait had hooks on it, we would have caught the fish. So be careful not to overwork your bait. And that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see as we're going through there. So this is basically, it's a Excalibur, and it's called basically the Bass Pro version of the Pop R. Very good, very consistent bait. A lot of money won on these baits. These are really good as the fall of the year moves on. From about 60 up, this is one of the baits I always have tied on. Once the water temperature moves down in the fall, and it starts getting from some 85 at about the high end back down, we catch a lot of fish on these baits. We win a lot of money on these baits in the fall. And because most of the shad are within 2 to 3 inches in the lakes that time of year, so they're chasing these shad. This is kind of the bait that they threw. So just be careful not to overwork it. So like I said, if I was fishing the brush pile there, I would probably throw it as close as I could to it, and just let it set and see if any comes. And like I said, just be careful not to overwork it, because a lot of people think you have to be moving your bait to get a fish to eat it, and that's not the case at all. We got one watching. Let's see if he comes to get it or not. He's thinking about it. We got 2 interested. Let's see if he's going to eat it or not. He's sure thinking about it. And sometimes you can twitch it, get their attention, but a lot of times just letting it set a lot of times makes a big difference over time. And amazing, and see how slow they move? They're thinking about it. They're thinking, well, that thing's up there. We may or may not want to eat it. They'll look at it, and like I said, just be careful not to overwork it. He's thinking about it. Yep, there you go. And another thing is, a lot of times if they miss it, but people keep working it, and on the lake. So a lot of times if you see a fish miss it, just stop it and kill it, because a lot of times there's 3 or 4. Notice how one missed it. Now we've got 4 beside it. You never know how many fish are beside the one that missed it. So we got one interested in it, and a lot of times I'll just dead stick it and kill it. And then the other ones, it gets them all interested, and they'll come up. Let's see if this one's going to get it or not. He's thinking about it. Change his mind. So anyway, that is what we call, like I said, the Bass Pro version of the Pop R Excalibur. So neat little bait. There's a couple of bucks. Always should have a couple in your tackle box. And I'm going to go through a couple of different types of baits today. The next one, when we define top water, a lot of people think it's just the lure that's just on top, just moving on the very top of the water. However, for me, top water kind of is a modified version of it. It can be worked close to the top and then stopped and killed a lot of times when it falls down. Notice, to me, that's top water because it's less than a foot of water. So, and a lot of times, once again, this is a fluke type bait. Bass Pro's got them on sale again today since this is our spring classic. This is basically the Bass Pro version of the fluke. And we'll use this one to get their attention, and then we'll kill it right in front of them, and they can't stand it. This is one of my favorite types of baits. I'll have this bait tied on. Whoops, he doesn't have a hook, and he still didn't want to get rid of it, huh? I'll have this bait tied on when the water, from 50 degrees and up, I'll have one of these tied on my pole every time. Because we can be, if there's a fish around, and sometimes they'll just come in when they're feeding, they'll come get it just immediately. But most of the time, I have to jerk it through the water and then kill it to where I'm on it. So I'll pull it out a couple of times and let it fall, and then count to whatever. Oh, I can't even get it through them without them eating it hardly. Let's see if it'll get to the bottom. So this is like I said, a fluke type bait. We've got these on sale as well. So these are one of the things. You know, for $3 or $4, they come in several in a package. If you want some help afterwards, we'll be able to. Oh, there he goes again. These are things that I like these because they're weedless. We can rig them to where they'll go through the brush and the weeds and all that. A good thing for the kids. I have twin 4-year-olds and a 13-year-old. So this is the thing I take to the ponds a lot. Whether you're in a pond or a lake or whatever, you know, if they throw it in the tree, it's no big deal because it's not going to get hung up. You can get it right back out. Because we can fish it weedless, and then once the thing they do have to do is since it's coming weedless, when the fish eats it, then they have to be able to jerk. So you have to teach the kids how to fish this occasionally, and you got to be able to teach them when their fish is pulling down on it. They got to be able to pull the thing. Oops, give it back. Here we go. You got to be able to teach them how to basically to jerk on it. So that's a good precursor to like a worm and things like that. Something a little different. The next bait we're going to talk about is the topwater frog. This is my favorite all-time pond bait because this one is basically truly weedless. I mean, you can throw it in the trees, you can throw it over the muck. A lot of the ponds will have the moss around it and the green stuff, things like that. We throw them in the lakes a lot. And this one's a little bit different. This one, and you basically got to keep it moving and to get them. You got to have a fairly active fish to get them to eat it. And once again, a lot of times, this one I'll jerk it up to, like if there's a brush pile or something, I'll fish it up to it and then stop it and then just let it sit there for a little bit. And so we'll just kill it. And if the fish is fairly active, they'll come get it. I use this bait to cover a lot of water and locate fish a lot of times. It's an excellent pond bait. Once the ponds reach about 65 degrees and up, they'll come get it and they'll eat that one. Notice they're not jumping on this one as much. It's a bigger profile bait. It's a little bit bigger. It's thicker. They're not eating it quite as fast. Like I said, they got to be fairly active to get this one. But we catch some really big fish. I mean, if it's 70 degrees, the pond waters, it's May, and I want to try to catch the biggest fish in the pond. This is one of those baits I'll be throwing. This is my limit bait. In the water, even in the lakes, once it gets pretty high, we'll work it up. Typically, I'll work it up to you can pop it, you can make it dance back and forth. And notice the waters, they're not what I call extremely aggressive. The water in here is 62 degrees. As the water gets warmer and warmer, they get more aggressive and they'll come eat these things a little better. That's why the first two baits I put out are a little bit, probably would be my first choice in the colder water. But we do catch some really nice fish on these things. Let's see if we can get one to entice a little bit. So the water in here is 62. I do catch some fish in the 60-degree water on this. Typically it's about 65 and above. Notice how they'll come up and just nose it, and they'll pull the legs, and it's something different they haven't seen before. They're not real sure how to react to it. But this is a topwater frog. I think these are about $7 or $8 a piece. Right now, I think they've got them on sale for about $4 a piece. This is one you definitely want to have in your tackle box. This is a good pond bait, by all means. Actually, I have a complete box with about 40 of these things, different colors and things like that, in my bass boat that stays in there all the time. So this is what's what we call the topwater frog. This one I really like it because you can throw it right in the tree and it's not going to get hung up. You can pull it back and around. It's just a truly weedless bait. It's a good bait for my son to throw when he goes with me fishing a lot. It's a great bait. It gets through the muck. It's designed to get through all the stuff. He's thinking about it. One more type of bait I'm going to go through is a different type of frog. This one actually swims under the water a little bit. Once again, about 60 degrees and above when I have this one tied on. This one's a little more, it's kind of a subsurface frog. And this one we'll reel through. Check out the legs. You can reel it right on top. Typically, we'll just kind of buzz it across the top. And they got to be fairly active to eat this one as well. But you can catch some really nice fish on this one. And one way to do it is just kind of run it across the subsurface. These fish, he's thinking about it. These fish, like I said, the water temperature affects the fish tremendously. It's 62 degrees, so I know if the water is less than 65, typically you're going to kind of run it under the surface like that. versus notice how when I ran it on top of the water, they would ignore it. But when I ran it under the surface about a foot, then it kind of got their interest. So when the water's about 65 and below, I don't fish this bait right on top. I fish it below it, and just to get their attention. But once the water, like you said, if it's from about May on in the ponds and things like that, then the water temperature gets, and you can actually buzz it on crossing the top. This one's a nice bait to fish the ponds and the lakes with. Any kind, it's weedless. You can throw it wherever you want to. If the kids hit something with it or throw it up on the bank, it's not a big deal. You can throw it right in the trees if you want, pull it right back out. It's another type of weedless bait that we use to get in and around the weeds with. And you can run this one through and then just kill it. And, like that. So this is one I throw in the tree, bring it out, and it entices them. And when they get it, they notice how they just, I mean, he's shaking his head. When they decide to eat this thing, they really eat it. And a lot of times, just letting a bait fall and no action at all. I learned a long time ago, no action at all sometimes is a good thing. And so I mean, there's just a lot of different ways to make this thing. So when we define, topwater in that time of year, there's different ways to do it. When you think of topwater, but one of the things, there's kind of a catch here as we notice as we're going through. Fish like to eat things that are falling. It's an easy meal for them. So if you're fishing topwater, like I said, just be careful not to overwork your baits. Because if I'm throwing it out, I know my son when he first started, I mean, he's just burning it in. That's the way my son fishes stuff. He throws it out, and Dad, I'm not catching anything. Dad, I'm not catching anything. And then one day I'm like, Caleb, throw it by that tree and reel it up and then stop it. And I want you to count to 10. And 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, I want you to count to 10. And then lo and behold, and then a fish grabbed it, and then he figured it out. And he's like, well, why did that happen? I'm like, fish like to eat things that are falling. It's natural to them as things are going down. So when you see topwater, it doesn't necessarily have to be all the time topwater. Oh, he just decided that was too close to him, didn't he? So you never know. And it's the interesting thing to me is we can't see. I love fishing in the tank because I can see the fish, right? In the lake or the pond, we don't know what's down there. And typically, if you catch one fish, there's 10 or 20 within that range, which is amazing. So my name's Ray Stagner. I'm one of the fishing team members for Bass Pro. I'm going to come down we'll turn off the mic now, come down. We'll talk about some of the lures in depth if you want to. If you want me to take you over and show you kind of where those are at on the things, to pick some things out for the pond and so on and so forth, I'll be happy to help you with that. I'll go show you what's in my tackle box. A lot of people, probably the biggest question I get is, hey, what's in your tackle box and what does it look like? Well, some of the things I'm doing today is what's in my tackle box. So that way you kind of know to help you improve your chances of having success.